Hello, and welcome back to the Michigan State Wealth Management Association podcast. We are back with another episode of the Summer Rewind series, where we get to upload previous favorites for you to enjoy. We look forward to seeing you this fall with new episodes. Until then, enjoy these classics.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the WMA podcast. My name is Hannah Lakian, and I'll be the host of today's podcast, where we have guest Ashby Daniels joining us. Ashby joined the financial advising industry in 2008 and transitioned to a career at Shorebridge Wealth Management in 2018. Ashby is not only a successful advisor, but a CFP professional, blogger, and author. In today's episode, we discuss his journey into entering the industry, strategies to communicate with clients at or nearing retirement, resources to help as an advisor, advice for starting a career in financial advising, tips to pass the CFP exam, and so much more. Stay tuned. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the WMA podcast. Today, we have joining us Ashby Daniels, who is a CFP professional and currently Chief Operating Officer of Shorebridge Wealth Management. Welcome, Ashby, and thank you so much for joining us and being here.
Thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes. All right, Ashby, so we'll go ahead and get right into it. I'd love to know a little bit more about yourself and kind of your journey to get to where you are now.
Sure. So it's a long and winding road, as I found is true for just about everybody. I went to school for accounting. So I did public accounting for a year out of college. I knew about 3 hours into that job that it was not going to be the one for me. But I liked working with numbers, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do at that point. At that juncture, I transitioned over to actually building houses. Doing like construction superintendent work and stuff like that. That sounds very far off the mark, but that was what I grew up doing. My family had a construction business and stuff like that. So it worked in my life. But while I was doing that, I kind of figured out that where my real love was, working in finance. And I mean, the things I was reading for fun was, all the magazines that I now discourage people from reading. But that was what sparked the interest in any case. So that was where kind of the interest came from. So I joined the business, I became a financial advisor in November of 2008. So as the market was basically collapsing was when I decided to get into the business. But it was a great time to join the business actually, because, opportunistically when the world is burning down is generally speaking, a great time to add value to people's lives. So I joined in 2008. I was with a different company for about 10 years. I found that wasn't a fit for me after a while. I wanted to do some different things that weren't really opportunities at my old firm. So I joined Shorebridge in 2018. So in February of 2022, it'll be 4 years I've been here and love every second of it.
Yeah, awesome. So how was that transition from, going with a firm for 10 years and then, transitioning to Shorebridge?
That was a difficult one. I mean, it wasn't a difficult decision, but it was a tough transition. I have a wife and 2 kids. My wife is incidental CPA. She's been at home with our kids since our oldest was born 8 years ago. He was 4 at the time when I transitioned over to Shorebridge. But it was very, a leap of faith, if you will, but it was one that needed to be taken. And, luckily I'd been an advisor for the previous decade and I was somebody who followed my own advice. We were significant savers and, we were prepared financially to take the risk. And so, one thing I find is interesting is that in our industry, a lot of people do not take their own advice. They live, as high on the hog as they can do it. And, they spend everything that they make for the perception that they're doing really well. And generally speaking, that's not a very smart thing to do, as you can imagine. So luckily we did take our own advice for north of a decade. So we were very prepared financially to make the jump, but it was still very stressful.
Definitely. Yeah. So I guess if you don't mind talking, I read a little bit that you went towards working with families at or nearing retirement. Can you kind of talk about, why you wanted to work in that direction, or, kind of how that's going for you?
Well, it was definitely an interesting, I guess, I don't want to say transition, it was an interesting choice given, my age. I probably became really interested in working with people who are at or nearing retirement somewhere along the time I was 30, which if you think about it, if I'm helping people who are 60, 65, I am in most cases the exact age of their children. So, there's an interesting transition that they have to make, is that, like, look, I'm entrusting somebody that's my child's age, and as you become a parent one day, probably, maybe, the idea is that your kids are always kids, so I think it can become complicated, but the idea is that, hey, look, I'm 30 years old, you're 65, I'm going to be doing this, Lord willing, through the entirety of your retirement. So you never have to worry that your advisor is going to retire, while you're in retirement. And so what could have been a net negative, I turned into a serious positive. As long as you have what I have found though, is as long as you have the expertise, people do not care how old you are. If you're 23 years old and you know everything there is to know about a certain subject, people respect that. They don't care that you're whatever age you are. And so, knowing the things that you need to know, that is so beneficial that it will make your age all but irrelevant.
Definitely, yeah. Talked about establishing that expertise and stuff, but how would you say that dynamic, what are some strategies that you use to communicate with older clients or build that trust?
That's a unique question. That's a great question, actually. What I've been told for many years is that I'm an old soul. So I've been told from when I was 20 that I'm a 65-year-old trapped in I'm 38 now, but then I'm a 65-year-old trapped in a 38-year-old body. And that is definitively true. I'm on the very, very old age of millennials, but I don't act like a millennial at all. We grew up still without cell phones and everything else. So we're like the very beginning of that transition. And so I don't know, I don't want to say it's natural, but I spent a lot of time as a child, I spent a lot of time with my grandparents. So that communicating with what would have been my grandparents' age when I was a kid is about the people who I'm communicating with now regularly. And so it was just very comfortable to me. I felt, I think that one thing that sticks out is I grew up, a lot of my family was military. So I grew up with, we'll call them manners, the yes ma'ams, the yes sirs, the Mr., the Mrs. And I find that the age group that I'm primarily helping responds well to that. Now, most of them, almost all of them are like, just call me John or just whatever. But the respect, you have to earn it first. And so I think that approaching it in a way that you're coming to their level as opposed to asking them to come to yours.
Great. I think that's really well said and really good advice, the earning the trust. I love that. So I want to hop into next kind of more about Shorebridge Wealth Management. Can you talk about kind of the firm as a whole and kind of what is your view on investing and planning?
So there's two different questions, but as far as Shorebridge is concerned, we're a pretty unique firm. I refer to us as married singles. So we're 5, actually just turned 6 advisors as of yesterday. We hired a new advisor as of yesterday. So there's 6 of us, but we all manage our own practice, our own business underneath the Shorebridge umbrella. So we all own our own clients. If I ever left the firm, I own my clients stay with me, or same is true for any other advisor in the firm. So we're really focused on being advisor centric. as a firm, because we're of the belief that we want this to be the best place for an advisor to work. And because we don't own anybody's clients, we're really trying to make it an environment that people want to be. And so that makes, I think, Shorebridge pretty unique. As far as our investing philosophies, they're as varied as they are, number of advisors, because we all do manage our own practice. I mean, as we were talking before we went live, I'm an enormous Vanguard and DFA advocate. Those are the dimensional fund advisors. For those who don't know who DFA is, those are the two primary fund companies that I utilize almost exclusively. I do have a little bit of iShares ETFs, but for the most part, those are the companies that I utilize from an investment perspective. I'm just of the belief that if you try to beat the market, you're also by default introducing the possibility of losing to the market. So if the average will get you to your goals, and oh, by the way, the average, if you're just average for 10 years, that puts you way above average over 10-year periods. And that's evidenced by, the data, the fact that 90+% of fund managers can't beat the index over a 10-year period. To me, it makes sense. Why fight the tide? And so that kind of encapsulates how I view investing as a whole, if that's helpful.
Definitely. Yes, for sure. So then I guess I'll ask another kind of a little basic question, but can you describe kind of your typical day or your typical, week, how you communicate with your clients, or kind of what goes in to, your career as a financial advisor?
The best part of doing what it is that we do is that every day is different. It's different based on what's going on in the market. It's different based on what's going on in clients' lives. It's different based on what's going on in our own lives. I mean, we bring all of these things to the table. So every day is unique. I will say that I have a couple staples that are part of my day. I only have 57 client relationships. That's by design. I didn't say that I was going to start out, like, the goal wasn't, I want 57 clients. That's not true, but I knew I wanted a very small and manageable client base. So a staple that's part of my day is I have it on my to-do list every single day to call 3 clients. And so if I call 3 clients every working day, which doesn't happen every single day, but for the most part, I successfully achieve calling 3 clients every day. I'm staying in front of them. I'm staying involved in their life. What you'll find is that most of my clients I've been working with for more than a decade. So a lot of my clients, it ends up just being a conversation that's almost friend to friend. And that's the best part of doing what it is that we do, is that I'm so invested in their life and their financial success that it's a friendship as much as it is a partnership in trying to help them accomplish their goals. So the way my day looks is different every day. I have client appointments some days I don't have client appointments, but I try to stay in touch with my clients each and every day. And then obviously, you mentioned I was the COO of our firm. I do a lot of stuff in helping to manage the firm. So like we just had a new advisor start. So I'm having, we're trying to get him on board and up and running. So there's a variety of things that could come about. My day is different every day, which is actually makes it great.
I agree. I think the different day, the different weeks, I think it's a good quality of having a career in financial advising. You've mentioned a couple of these, throughout talking, but what do you think are some, characteristics or some traits of, a really successful financial advisor? Are those successful characteristics of someone who can, communicate well with their clients?
Well, I think you said it best right there, is the ability to communicate well, the ability to communicate at times either complex or scary times to kind of help your clients practice rationality in times of great uncertainty. And so being able to communicate well is one part. I think that getting started, if you're working in, let's call it a traditional financial advisory company, I mean, being a hard worker goes without saying. I mean, my first 4 years in the business, 4 or 5 years in the business, I mean, I worked, I don't know, 10 to 15 hour days, depending on, while I was getting my business up and running. Now that's certainly not the case. I mean, I don't work those many hours anymore, but being a hard worker, being willing to do whatever it takes to get it off the ground. I kind of approached my first few years in the business as I don't have a choice but to succeed. And I will do whatever it takes in order to succeed, obviously, ethically speaking. But, the hours were not going to be in question. So that was part of it. And then I would say, last but not least, last but probably first is caring for your clients. I mean, I treat every client, or at least I do my best to treat every client as if they share my last name. I want them to feel like I care about them as much as I care about my own family. And I think that if you approach it from that perspective, success is probably inevitable. I mean, what sets me apart from any other advisor? Well, this is not able to be measured. I think most things that are important aren't able to be measured. But I genuinely say that, like, look, I'm going to care about you as much as anybody who doesn't share your last name. And I hope that they feel that. I want them to feel that. I'm not in the business of selling anybody on anything, myself included. If I'm not the right fit to work with somebody, that's okay. I just want them to know that there is somebody who cares for them. If it's, presuming that means that it's the right fit, then we probably have a basis from which to work. So I don't know if that answers the question, but those are the things that come to mind.
Yes, I think it answers it perfectly, and I'm sure our listeners will really appreciate all of that. So yes, thank you. I want to pivot a little bit. I saw a little bit about your blog. So would you mind kind of sharing a little bit more about that and, touching on the process of starting your blog and kind of what that, plays in your life?
Yeah, so for the first 3 years after I joined Shorebridge, I wrote a post pretty much every week. I think I wrote something like, I don't know, I probably wrote 200 plus blog posts over 3 years. However, ironically, given the question, almost stopped writing on it. And that has more to do with the fact that I stopped taking on new clients. But I still communicate with my clients in the written word. I just do it via private newsletter. But the blog was really one of the best things that's ever happened to me, in the sense that what you'll find is, if you decide to start writing a blog, is that it helps you to find your own voice. And by writing things down and putting them, taking the time to put them into a form that is hopefully interesting and useful, that you begin to kind of crystallize your own thinking on certain things. And so early on, I was writing more for, I don't want to say SEO, but I was writing more for that search engine optimization, for people who don't know. I was writing more for the search engines than I was on things that I was truly interested in. And then over time, I think Michael Kitces talks about how it takes 3 years for a blog to take hold. And that was probably true. It probably took me between 2 to 2.5 years to really find what my voice was specifically. And so, but writing has changed my life in so many ways. I mean, I've written a couple books as well. I've done, I do some other writing projects that are really fun. So that said, I know this isn't the question, but I don't think the medium is the important part. If you like doing video, then do video. If you like writing, then write. If you like doing podcasting like you're doing, then podcast. I think that whatever way connects with you is what you should be doing. But whatever it is, find that thing and then do it a lot.
Awesome. Yeah, I think it's a great way to, find your voice and then express it. So I think that's awesome. So
you're way ahead of the game already. You're doing this podcast. You're gonna be an old hat by the time you actually get started in the business.
Oh gosh, well, we can hope. But yeah, now I want to talk a little bit about the resources that you use to help you as an advisor. So books, or other financial advisors, or any other blogs, or kind of, I guess, what resources do you have to help you up to date with the market, or keeping yourself successful in this field?
So I have a lot of resources. I do it as a, I guess, writer, if we want to refer to myself as such. I do a ton of reading. I think just about any advisor who writes a lot probably reads a lot. And I would say the same is true if you're a podcaster or a video or whatever. You consume something a lot. Nick Murray's probably my all-time favorite writer. He has a newsletter that is exclusively for financial advisors that you have to pay for. It's not insignificantly expensive, but it's worth every penny. He has written, I think, 11 books total. I have 10 of them, which I read and reread. So Nick Murray's probably my favorite resource of all. But as far as blogs go, my other favorite writers are Howard Marks, who is Oak Tree Investment Management, which incidentally, he's a bond guy. I'm an equity advocate. But his writing is just so, it's just such high quality, and his thought processes and how he phrases things are just so good. So he's probably my other favorite writer. As far as other resources, though, I'm a member of the advisor AGC, is the Advisors Growing as a Community, started by incidentally two of my friends, Justin Castelli and Taylor Schulte, who are just phenomenal human beings. But what the organization they've managed to build is just so useful for financial advisors. I think there's, somewhere up to 200 advisors in the organization, and it's just, I get something out of it probably every week, or if there's a question I have, then I refer to that. And then obviously within my own firm, we have 5 extremely intelligent people right here. And then I read an immense amount just from across the web, but those are probably my 3 top are, the AGC, and then Nick Murray and Howard Marks.
Definitely. I think all the resources you list amazing. And I feel really lucky to be, be in the AGC through this mentorship program with Michigan State. So definitely amazing and great resources.
Excellent.
Yes. So I want to ask, what is something you think people should know about financial advising or about this industry that's not talked about enough?
There's a lot of people trying to do good work. Our industry, frankly, doesn't have the best reputation historically. But I can tell you that from the advisors who are in the AGC, as an example, the advisors I surround myself with locally, I'm in a local mastermind, here in Pittsburgh, and there are just so many good people who are really trying to make a difference in people's lives and in our industry and leave their mark on our business. And I think that it gets lost in a lot of the kind of old sales culture that exists. And I am hoping, I'm also kind of bullish, if you will, on, look at you, Hannah, like the diversity, both from a gender perspective and, ethnicity, people of color coming into the business. Like, that is so exciting to see the business change from, what was called old, stale, and male to, looking like the rest of the world, which is just so good to see. And so I don't know if that's I can see the tide shifting, and it's a welcome shift. And I think that with that comes hopefully the extinction of the old culture that kind of this business grew up around, to one of, living by the fiduciary standard and, doing right by people. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's definitely, nope. That's what's on my mind anyway.
Definitely. I think it does, for sure. Then now I want to talk about, you kind of mentioned this, but I guess what advice do you maybe have for, people who want to, enter into this industry, who maybe don't really fit that, stereotype of what it should be. I know a lot of our listeners are students who are, maybe wanting to pursue a career in financial advising. So I guess what advice do you have for them, or maybe more specifically, what advice do you have for women who might want to enter into this industry?
Well, that's a great question. And I think that, first of all, is to, if you can, find a mentor. But I think more than anything else, I would say develop a reputation for something. There's Caitlin Cook. I don't know if you know who that is, but she started writing a blog when she was still in school. I don't even remember where she was in school. We're friends on Twitter. I don't even know her personally, but she comes to mind as somebody who has made a really interesting career for herself. And it all started with connecting with people in our industry in a value-oriented way. She was social with people. And I think she's only 23 or 24 years old and is already has an amazing reputation. And so I would say trying to find ways to add value. I think that the social media world has opened up a lot of doors that would have previously been shut. I think that what Michigan State is doing with the AGC is an amazing way to hopefully open doors. If nothing else, just from a mentorship perspective, like helping, trying to get relationships started with people who are respected and admired in the industry. I mean, I can tell you that just about anyone that is worth talking to would willingly take a call from anybody who's getting started. I mean, I got an email just last week from a guy who's studying at Pitt, and he emailed me and just says, "Hey, I'm looking for career advice. Would you be willing to answer some questions, spend 30 minutes on the phone with me?" And the answer is an unequivocal yes. Like, that takes guts to just reach out to somebody and just say, "Hey, will you spend 30 minutes on the phone with me?" I say it takes guts, but what's the worst answer you could get? No, or no response. Like, big deal. Then reach out to somebody else. That guy or girl probably stinks. So, be proactive. I mean, if you're trying to enter a business that requires proactivity, then be proactive. And so reach out, don't be scared of, and don't get discouraged. There's a lot of, as much as the industry is changing, there's still bad people in the business. And that's just the nature of the beast. Those people will filter out over time, but reach out to people who you have started to admire in some way, shape, or form. And then, just ask if I can have 15 minutes of your time, to ask questions on career choices or whatever. I bet you'll get more good responses than you think.
Definitely. I agree. I think you just got to do it. Make the step, take the chance. And
you emailed me out of the blue. Yeah, I was happy. Of course, I'm happy to do this.
Yeah, definitely. I think being proactive and building those connections, establishing those relationships goes a really long way. So yes, thank you for saying that for sure. To kind of end it, I know a lot of our listeners are students and thinking about taking the CFP. I know you're a CFP professional. So can you talk a little bit about that process or any advice you have, for taking and completing the CFP exam?
So the best advice I can give anyone is take a live review course and then just do exactly what they tell you to do. I mean, I did my CFP courses through the American College. So I did the 6, I don't know, I think it's changed. I did mine in 2013 or 2014 or something. And I did the 6 courses, each one had their own exam, and then you obviously have to take the CFP exam itself. I think it's changed a little bit since then, but the point is still the same, which is the courses were what they were. I mean, I did fine in them, whatever. But the live review course is what prepares you for the CFP exam. And so if I had any advice, I would say do your live review course and then do exactly what they tell you. I took a live review course and somebody gave me this advice and I said, got it. I took a live review course and I mean A to Z, did exactly what they said to do after the exam. And I may be the only person who you'll ever hear say this, but I thought the CFP exam was easy. And the only reason I thought that is because I am 100% convinced that has nothing to do with how smart I am. I'm not that smart, but I did exactly what they told me to do. And I was way prepared. I mean, I said when I walked out of that, I told my wife, I said, if I didn't pass, I don't know what else I'm going to study, because I was as prepared as I could be. And, so take the live review and then just do what they tell you. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. Don't try to cut corners. Just do what they tell you.
Awesome. Love it. All right. Noted. Live review course and do exactly what they say. Appreciate it.
Bingo.
Yes, definitely. Okay. Well, awesome. I think that'll wrap up our podcast, but thank you so much for, being a part of Michigan State's Wealth Management podcast and, joining us as a guest and sharing, advice and, about yourself. Thank you so much. Can't thank you
Oh,
enough.
it's my
So,
pleasure,
thank
Hannah.
you.
Thanks for asking me. Appreciate
Definitely.
it. Have a great
Yes.
day.
Of course. You too. Thanks, Ashby.
If you like what you just heard, please like, comment, and share. This is Lance Mullen, producer of the MSU WMA podcast. MSU WMA, or Michigan State University Wealth Management Association, is a student organization part of the Eli Broad College of Business, located in East Lansing, Michigan. Our mission is to inspire and educate the next generation of financial planners. Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed, please check out our channel on all platforms such as Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and check out our social media at MSU WMA and msuwma.com.